Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast, where we're over here exploring the unfiltered truths of fatherhood, self care, mental health, and just navigating the chaos of everyday life. Hope you enjoy the conversation.
This is Amber McCrae with Connection Over Perfection. I'm also part of the Podcast Connection Network. Check out my show and other shows like the one you're about to listen to. The link is in the episode description.
Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And on today's episode, we have Lindsey Davis, and we're going to talk a little bit about self-compassion today. How are you doing today, Leslie?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm doing awesome. It's Memorial Day weekend. It's Sunday. Long weekend. So I'm happy to be in the office and not stuck out in traffic. So I see a bunch of Texas plaques on your wall. Are you from Texas, in Texas, graduate from Texas?
All of the above, but I graduated from Texas Tech, not University of Texas.
We won't hold that against you. I'm from Texas. I live in Texas. I'm in Texas. I went to UT Tyler.
Well, I won't hold that against you.
But, I'm from Tyler, and Patrick Mahomes is our hometown.
Well, yes, he
boy
went to
here.
Tech, Yeah. I mean, that's why I follow the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Houston Texans stink.
And then also one of the physicians that work for me and one of the PAs, they both went to Tech as well.
Well, see there, you're surrounded by geniuses.
Yeah, there you go. So how did you get, like I was saying before in our pre-discussion, I always like to see where people were and where they are now and what led them on this journey or got them to start this journey that led them to where they are now. So give us a little bit of your background and how we ended up on the other side of the camera from each other.
Well, the easiest way to describe how I ended up where I am right now is back in 2016, early 2016. I had one of those moments that I like to call an emotional tsunami, because that's the best way to describe what happened. In that moment, my father had just recently died. My oldest son and his wife decided they did not want to have a relationship with me for whatever reason. They had a brand new baby, and I was thrown into what I call a wash, rinse, repeat moment in my life, because rewind at that point in time, about 30 years prior, my mother had died, and 2 weeks later, my oldest child, this very child, had been born. And I didn't know how to grieve, didn't have the opportunity to grieve. So I just started stuffing everything down, because I believe that that's what you should do. You get on about the business of getting on.
Right.
So when this emotional tsunami happened to me, the actual trigger was the grandchild being born, because I was taken back in that moment. My mother didn't get to enjoy her grandchild. All of these things happened. And I felt as if the world was just crashing on me. And if you think about a tsunami, that wave is pulling all that water back from the shore and exposing the ocean floor. And then that wave is just building and building and building. And then it comes crashing down, and, there's total and utter destruction. And that's kind of how I felt. I felt as if my life was just a mess, a total and utter destruction. And in that moment, I took a tiny little breath in that moment, and I realized I could either keep going the way that I was going, or I could make a decision to get healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. And at that time, I said, I don't know what the future is going to hold, because I don't know about you, but I don't have a crystal ball or any Ouija boards or anything like that. So all I could do was hope that if I changed something, if I got healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally, that as I continued moving forward, that my life would start leveling out, and possibly, potentially, I would be able to reestablish a relationship with my son, his wife, and grandchildren. Now, I will, spoiler alert, recently we did, start spending a lot of time together and we are moving forward with our relationship. But I 100% owe that opportunity to the work that I did, because part of what I discovered is the only person I'm in control of is me. I'm not in control of anyone else. So the best thing I could do was to focus on taking care of myself. And part of that became understanding and acknowledging and accepting I was entitled to feel what I felt. And it didn't make any difference what anybody else thought. If it was logical, it didn't matter. And one of the things that I really am excited that you're doing is you're speaking directly to men. That's your primary audience. I have 3 boys and a husband. My dogs are all girls because, that's enough testosterone in the house. But but one of the things that I've tried to do from the time that they were very small was to help them to be able to express their feelings, but not only that, but to understand that it was okay to feel, what they felt.
Right.
Now, apparently I did a fairly decent job, with them, but I did a horrible job with myself. And societally, and generationally, let's go back thousands of years, especially when we're talking about men and even women to some degree. If you express anything less than I am okay, you're weak.
Yeah.
You're weak. And as women also, if you are a wife and a mother, well, you're supposed to put everybody else's needs first above your own, and you're supposed to discount your own feelings. So let's just talk about people in general, because we're all kind of sitting on the same planet, aren't we?
Mhm.
And part of the thing that I discovered and I realized, as I said, I had the right to own my feelings. I had the right to feel what I felt. And the way that I discovered this was I was tracking what I was eating. And I noticed on one day that I had eaten like, a half a thing of Oreo cookies, an entire bag of chips, and the list is long and lengthy. This was all in one day. And I asked myself, what in the heck is going on that this is what you did and it wasn't what you planned and you don't feel good, and this long conversation. And so I wrote down what I was feeling and why I did what I did. And then the next time it happened, I did the same thing again. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I am writing down what I'm feeling and I'm starting to feel better, because part of my problem and part of a lot of other people's problem is I didn't feel heard by anyone. And if I expressed my true feeling, my true emotion, my true sentiment about a situation, oftentimes I was told you shouldn't feel that way. And when we're told that, we start questioning what we are thinking, and we start believing that somebody else knows better than we do. But here's the problem, Richard. When we deny what we really and truly feel, how we are really and truly thinking in that moment, our body knows the truth. Our mind is trying to override it, but our body is screaming, no, this is not what is really going on. And that's when we start taking on behaviors and actions to offset that tension. So what I do and what I recommend other people do, especially people who feel as if they cannot safely express their honest and true feelings to another person, I have written conversations with myself, and I call it talking to your very best friend in the whole wide world. And that's me. That's me. Because how many times have you tried to share with someone something and you're sharing it for like the 20th or the 50th time, and you can watch the eye roll and the glaze, and I mean, how many times has that happened to you?
Often. Or maybe you're telling them 50 times because they're not paying attention the first 49.
Exactly.
And for me, I have to say, in all fairness, um, to all the listeners, all the spouses, all the best friends, it's not always all their fault, but my wife and I've been together for 18 years. And when you spend that much time with someone, you can become complacent. You can maybe think you're listening while you're on your phone or watching TV, but you're really not. And so it's kind of been more, you know, I think lately, as I've become more in tune with myself, I tend to, if it's really important, I say pause it or stop what you're doing. And I do the same thing with my daughter. But I have to ask you a question. When you started this and you were talking about, you said if I do the work on myself physically, emotionally, it would get better. What, so just for a baseline starting point, what was your physical and emotional and mental health states like at the time when you discovered this and kind of started writing that out? Were you ideal weight, overweight? Were you emotionally good most days and just have some spirals every now and again? Or how was that?
Well, physically is an easy answer. I was 100 pounds heavier.
Okay.
Um, and my joints hurt, everything hurt. It
And when you're physically overweight, a lot of people don't understand. I've been there. That impacts your mental health, your mentality. And when you start dropping some of that weight and feeling better and looking better, it has an automatic correlation to how your mental health works, I feel, in my personal
Mhm.
experience.
Well, and I had lost weight and gained weight multiple times. But the difference this time was that I was addressing the reason that I was overeating, sneak eating, and all those things. And that's part of what I talk about in my book, You Can't Eat Love, is, the lies that I told myself, like broken cookies have no calories. If you eat it and nobody sees it, it has no calories. If you eat, half of a chocolate cake with a Diet Coke, it has no calories. Those were all lies that I told myself. But like I said, it wasn't until I started addressing what was really going on. And what was really going on is I was shoving down all my feelings and emotions because I had been taught that I was not entitled to feel what I really felt. I had learned that from a very, very early age. And I had my defense mechanism, or my offset, my tension release, was to overeat and to sneak eat and to eat the things that were not, a good choice for me. Because what that did was it set off the shame and the embarrassment and all those other things, those feelings that I was comfortable feeling. I was comfortable
Mhm.
feeling shame. I was comfortable feeling anger. Um, and as a consequence of starting to address that these were the things that were going on, and having those written conversations with myself, and starting to tease out, okay, right now, my husband said something and I really didn't like what it was that he said. And I didn't really, express to him that I wasn't very happy with what he said. And so I'm really angry with myself because I didn't have this conversation with him. And so as a consequence, I caught myself eating that entire bag of chips, because what I really wanted to do is I really wanted to scream at him, how could you say such a thing to me? Can't you see how badly it hurt me? So that's where it all began. And mentally come out, I had walked away from a job because I was so severely depressed that I couldn't remember what I'd eaten for lunch 2 hours after I ate lunch.
Wow.
And so and retrospectively, I see that I struggled with depression probably from the time that I was an early teenager all the way through my life. But it all is tangled up in not being able to express in a safe way what I really felt, and being told, well, you shouldn't feel that way. I mean, for example, I was sharing with somebody just yesterday that I had, back when I was a sophomore in college, I was really depressed, very, very depressed. And I had written a letter to my father explaining, what I was feeling, and all this stuff, hoping, for some kind of words of wisdom, some kindness,
Right.
some comfort. And his response to me was, at least you've got your health.
Could see how that would be devastating.
And what do you do with that?
That's like I don't know. I I couldn't imagine telling my 10-year-old daughter that, even if she was 18 or 19, but it's kind of as we embark on these self-improvement journeys as humans through interviews and listening to podcasts, it's so crazy how much has been put on to each of us by generations before us. And sometimes it's hard to not forgive, but you have to realize these are people that came up through times of world wars, Great Depressions, Vietnam, and all these different things that left an imprint on them, and that how they were taught and told that they needed to act and behave, and the scarcity around like the Great Depression and whatnot. And therefore they carried it on to, their children. And then my parents carried it on to me. And it was kind of the same thing of, I don't think I was ever told that, but essentially, my mother, that side of the family, and my father too. I mean, they come from that generation where everything is work, regardless of how hard it is. Like, if you lost your toe, you should be happy you have the other four. No sympathy for losing the one, but, and that's not really when I think of silver linings, that's not how I think of them. So yeah, I can definitely see how that, especially when that's a person you trust and look up to and sincerely seek their advice because they've been there before. But that also doesn't convey any source of love. Like, I'm sorry you're going through this, so I could imagine that was very difficult for you.
Well, it was very difficult. And what it taught me was that my dad was not somebody that I could go to if I was feeling anything less than happy, healthy,
Right.
And I'd had a similar experience with my mother, several years prior to that. And this whole idea coalesced on another podcast. I was sharing with someone, the same thing. When you say to someone that you're feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, and their response is, well, you shouldn't feel that way. The aha moment for me, and that was when someone tells you that you should not be feeling what you are actually feeling, it is as if they're saying to you, and you're wearing a black shirt, it's as if they're saying to you that your black shirt is really yellow.
Makes
Now,
sense.
your body knows that you are truly and honestly feeling this, but this person that you know, like, and trust and believe only wants the very best for you is telling you that your black shirt is really yellow, so there must be something wrong with you. So my shirt is really yellow. And you move forward believing, that your black shirt is yellow until you get to a land of healthy people. And you're really excited because you've gotten this brand new yellow shirt and you just can't wait to show it off to everybody. And you go dashing into the middle of the crowd and you rip open your jacket and you say, "Don't you love my brand new yellow shirt?" And they look at you with kindness and with consideration and loads of compassion. And they may even put their arm on your shoulder and they say, "Yellow, it's black." And then you can feel that tension release from your body. However, your brain, your mind that only wants to protect you and only believes what it's told, it's like, wait a minute, hold on. What
Mhm.
about these people that I knew, liked, and trusted and believed only wanted the best for me? What's going on there? So that sets off a whole nother
Then you go back and you
uh,
question everything, and then that builds trust issues because, my parents, they waited to split up when I was in Japan.
oh,
They
wasn't
should,
that pleasant?
and nobody told me, and I came
Oh,
home and all of a sudden, okay, my dad and mom no longer lived together.
oh, I can just imagine
And
how you felt about that.
and so, and the fact that it was never told to me, discussed with me, maybe because, oh, I was too young, even though I was in the military, you're overseas in the 90s. So, it was still letters and prepaid phone cards. The thing was, is that I then had to go back and question everything. I sat there and go, what in my life was true from my
Right.
childhood till now? If they didn't tell me this, what else didn't they tell me? Or have they just been faking it all along? That caused me, in not trusting, to just go out and be self-destructive,
Well, of course it
to
did.
myself.
Yeah,
And
of course.
and it took me a long time. There was a period I didn't talk to my father for 10 years. So much came from that one little omission,
Hmm.
that the way I kind of view things is, even though my daughter's only 10, I don't treat her like she's just a child. She's a little person. And
Exactly.
I tell her the truth because I'm playing chess, not checkers. My goal is to build a long-term, trustful relationship to where when my daughter hits her teens and 20s and goes off on her own, that no matter what, she knows I will always shoot her straight and we won't have to go through what me and my parents went through.
Well, and you also probably want to have the kind of relationship with your daughter where you feel comfortable knowing that if something happens, if she makes a choice or a decision, regardless of good, bad, indifferent, whatever, she makes a choice or a decision that has a negative consequence, that she feels safe enough and secure enough that she's able to come to you immediately instead of you finding out through the grapevine or finding out later. And that's I had something similar happen to me, so I can very much understand how you felt. Now, the difference for me was we had gone on vacation. We lived in Venezuela. My parents had sent us ahead, and then we were all meeting in Mexico and then going to return to Venezuela. Among the last days of vacation, they said, no, you guys are going back to Texas with your grandparents, and we're going to pack up the house, and then we're moving. So I can understand how you felt when you returned from Japan. Sorry, King's X's, everything you knew, it's all over.
Mm-hmm.
We've ripped back the curtain and all you get is a little man behind the curtain pulling levers.
Yeah, not
So
even the same house. Not even the
the
one I grew up in. They had moved and then split up. It was
yeah.
crazy.
So I can relate to how you felt, and I can just imagine even, the ripple effect as you move forward with your life, that probably almost everything that you're doing is colored by that main event. So
Yes.
I can guess, I'm going to guess that with regard to your daughter, and I have never considered my children to be children. I've always considered them to be short people, and I've never
Yeah.
told them that they were not old enough to do something, even from the time that they were very, very small. I'm talking like 2 years old. They were simply too short to do something. And they could understand that because they knew that they were growing. But I
Right.
never told them that they were too young for anything. And even now, sometimes I kid with them and I'll say, you're just too short. Well, one of my boys is 6'4" and the other one is 6'3" plus, and the younger one is about 6 feet tall. So I get really strange looks when I say you're just too short.
But they know what it means.
They know what it means, and that's all that matters.
That's right.
But when we have those moments, we start questioning, as you said, you start questioning everything, and then that tension builds inside of us, and we have to do something with that tension that's inside of us. And so many times, just like you mentioned, you take on that self-destructive behavior because you're trying to release that tension.
Mine was drugs and alcohol all the way. And putting myself in risky situations and not caring about it. That was the worst part of it, was like, when you can honestly say to yourself and other people know that you don't care if you die
Yeah,
doing this.
yeah.
Now that I look back at it as a sane person, I go, yeah, that would be kind of scary for the people around you. Because it wasn't bravado, it wasn't machismo, it wasn't the fact that I
No,
was 20
no,
something years old.
no.
It was a literal to the core, like, I don't believe my entire life has been true up till now. So what does it matter?
Well, and I can just imagine the internal pain that you were feeling and the desperation to release that pain.
Yeah. So I moved like over, 1,300 miles away and visited maybe once every 2 years for 5 years. And, it's been a strange sequence of events, but, at the same time, I'm grateful and thankful that I never did anything that landed me with felonies or death or missing limbs or anything like that, and that I'm in a complete peace and not in that space anymore. But
But what you have now is a story that
yes,
you
in
can
a
tell to
way,
someone else who is struggling to put words to their pain.
and not only that, it allows me to connect with people such as yourself,
Hmm.
who we have these, similar experiences to a degree, but, to connect that and put our energies together and help others out there, because I come from a healthcare field, but a podcast reaches worldwide. So there's so many more people you can help. And that's why I feel it's important. A lot of the times in my solo episodes, a lot of them are more about me or a topic, but in terms of guests, it's really about, hey, I'm a conduit for somebody else's story that's going to help and save the world, or save, if it saves one person, then I'm happy with that.
And that's the mission that I clarified for myself when I published You Can't Eat Love, and I continue that mission with the journey from failing to healing in my next book that's going to come out in August, which is What Color
Oh,
Is My Shirt? Um,
oh, be interested in that.
um, if I can just reach one person, and that's all that I'm trying to do is reach one person, and I want to reach one person until I've reached 1 million people, and then I'm going to start all over again. So I'd love that, your mission is just to reach one person, just one person, because if we can focus on one person, then we have actually had a ripple effect that's going to impact thousands of people. And that's what so many people don't understand. Your story is so important and so critical that people hear your story. And my story is important and critical that people hear my story, because there are people out there who feel as if they are broken or there's something wrong with them, because the people that they are surrounded by are telling them that they are broken and there's something wrong with them. When they hear from somebody like you or somebody like me, then they can take a moment and they can say, wait a minute, hold on. Even though all these people are telling me that I'm broken or there's something wrong with me, these people right here who are telling my story to me are saying, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong. Follow us on the journey that we went on. And part of my journey, the most important part of my journey that I keep reminding myself almost daily, is having those written conversations with myself. Because let's be honest, even if your wife loves you and adores you and thinks that you are absolutely the most amazing person on the face of this earth, she probably gets really tired of you hoeing the same road or going over the same issue for 1,000 times. I know the people I'm surrounded with they get tired of hearing the same thing. Really, you're going to go on about this again? But the one person who is never, ever, ever tired or too sleepy or too anything to hear me, even at 2 o'clock in the morning, and yes, I am up at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Me too.
is me. It's
Yeah.
me. I get pen, I get paper, I start having that conversation. And by the time I finish, I feel lighter. I feel heard. The hamsters are off the wheels in my head. I've sent them back to the pet market. I'm on a mission to put the pet market out of business with regard to hamsters. Um, but I'm not desperately looking for somebody else to hear me. Now, does that sound a little bit, counterintuitive, since we're talking about this whole mental health and all these things, that we've got mental health therapists and experts and all that? No, but truthfully, you spend 50 minutes with a therapist or an expert in a week. Who are you spending the other 6 days, 23 hours, and 10 minutes?
Yourself.
Yourself.
Hey, after you finish listening to this amazing podcast, be sure to give it a 5-star rating. Then go check out the other podcasts in the Podcast Connection Network, including my own, Magic and Metamorphosis. Check us all out. The link will be in the episode's description.
So let's build a relationship with ourselves, and let's start learning how we can rely on ourselves, and let's start building trust with ourselves, that ourself is always going to be honest, always going to be honest.
Well, it's funny because I've been journaling for years and years. It was somebody in the Navy who kind of turned me on to it. And I used to always say that they kind of go in this memento box. And I go, well, one day when I'm gone from this earth, everybody's going to know what I really thought. But interestingly enough, since taking on podcasting, I considered writing a book called The Men of the House. But then when the podcast came out, it's kind of similar to a journal. I still journal daily, multiple times a day. I can tell when I don't. It's almost like you said, in a way, it's having you be your own safe person as much as you can be, especially in the terms of what you're saying or what you're hearing when it comes to dialogue. But that prompts me to ask the question to you. You didn't get what you needed or wanted from your father. Where did you end up besides yourself finding someone to be that person for you, a safe space, a safe person, someone to listen, maybe somebody to validate your feelings? When did you first find that? Was it in college? Was it afterwards?
It wasn't until really 2016, and
Oh, wow.
the safe person really was my youngest sister. But the primary reason that it was my youngest sister, actually I'm the oldest of 6 kids.
Oh, wow.
It was actually, my 2 younger sisters, but especially my youngest sister. But the number one reason that I was able to find her as a safe person is because she had already gone on her own journey. She had struggled with alcoholism, and she had become sober. Our mother died. Our mother was 49 when she died. My youngest sister was 18. I was 26. And we never grieved,
Right.
and she struggled with that mother loss and all that. And so anyway, she ended up going back and getting a degree in counseling, and she's now a counselor who specializes in working with people with grief and addictions. So because not only had she been on the journey, she's my sibling, right?
Right.
But she had done so much work on herself that she was able to hear what I was saying without judgment. And she was able to validate, what I was feeling as being true for me. And that's what I think is so, so, so important. When somebody comes to us and they share something that may be shocking or upsetting or whatever, we need to understand that it may be true for them. That doesn't mean it's true for us. It doesn't mean it's true for anybody else, but it's true for them. And that's really all that matters in that moment, is it's true for them in that moment. And that's why I like to tell people, your feelings are your feelings. Nobody else gets a vote. Let's stop doing feelings by committee. Let's just stop. And then the other thing that I like to say, because this was a big giant aha moment for me, I was trying to tell my husband he was making me feel, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Where's the power here? And I had this epiphany that when somebody does something, when something happens, I have a choice as to how I feel or how I react. And as long as I'm the one who is making the choice, then they are not making me anything. I'm choosing. I can either choose to feel however the heck I choose to feel as a consequence of what happened or what another person did, or I can choose to just leave it alone and let it not be anything. I've got a choice. So I tell people now, look, no one can make you anything, well, except reservations for dinner. And I prefer a 5-star restaurant, and you pick up the tab.
There we go. I don't know. I had a kinesiology professor who was big into, he said, when discussing or trying to get a point across, you never want to say, I feel, I feel. And I always remember that, especially in writing. But I never really associated that because I think of, something that may be triggering to me to go, well, how do you take that? How do you take the part out of it that triggers you and switch it over to choice? How do you gain that clarity to do that?
Reframe.
Reframe. A lot of
Uh-huh.
practice, I'm guessing.
And it is a lot of practice. And oftentimes I'll catch myself, wait a minute, hold on, what are you doing? Let's back this bus up and let's reframe it. And what I do, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. Trust me, I'm not perfect. What I do is I start focusing on behavior and not the person.
Okay.
Take the person completely out of it and let's focus on behavior. When this happened, I felt
This,
XYZ.
yeah.
When I felt XYZ when this happened. When you did this, I felt da 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 da. But you're actually better off saying I felt this when you did this. That way we're not attacking them with that you. Try and use I statements and focus on behavior. And
Yeah,
you'll feel then that you have a choice.
I've noticed when I get triggered by things, as I've spent more time working on myself and self-development, I've realized that sometimes I just don't have the words yet and that I need to step away. And because I Uber Eats for a living on the side, sometimes I'm like, I can listen to a podcast, be picking up somebody's food, but I can sort it out. And I can sort out like, what is it I'm actually feeling? And why is it I'm actually feeling it? You
Well,
know,
and another question to ask yourself is, when was the first time I felt this, and
oh,
what was going on at that time?
I like that. Because oftentimes it's easy to mistake something right away if you don't sit with it. And, I mean, I had a couple of weeks ago where I had some sort of feelings and I couldn't put them into words. And I took a little break. I did my Ubering. And, by the end of it, I concluded that it was something as simple as, I didn't want to argue with my daughter. And we were visiting my dad and she wanted to go do something instead. And, it cut that short and didn't want to fight with her about why spending time with a grandparent is important or this or that, and the other. And, I stuffed it down and kind of put up my guard a little, but it took a little bit of time to figure that out and go, what am I actually upset over? Whereas before, I think I would always be much more reactive, but there's a lot of value, I think, for people to understand that you have to sit and be uncomfortable to gain this level of understanding if you want to get to the other side, to be able to have some of the qualities like for like you to be able to say, no, 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 you didn't make me feel this way. I feel this way. Maybe it's something you did or whatever, but it's both self-development, maturity. It's a lot of different things, but the only way to get to that space is you got to be willing to sit and deal with being uncomfortable. And I find that that's what holds back progress for so many people, whether it be in a weight loss journey, a self improvement of your emotional health, your spiritual health. That, people often think of, well, if it's uncomfortable, then maybe something's wrong.
Right.
Well, maybe it just doesn't feel, maybe it's uncomfortable because it doesn't feel natural because it's a new behavior that you're trying to, just like you start something new. My first episode of podcasting was not the best,
But
but
it
you,
was
but
still your first one.
right. And you don't expect it to be. And I would say anybody going through some sort of journey like this, you got to show yourself some grace and know that it's going to be uncomfortable. And you got to be willing to ride out that discomfort. I just think there's no other way around it.
Well, also, when we are talking about emotions, if we have been taught from a very, very early age that we are not entitled to feel what we are really, really feeling, or when we express, an uncomfortable for everybody else emotion and we are, chastised or shot down for it, then it's almost as if, we've started lifting heavy weights. Our muscles are going to be very tired very quickly.
Right.
So as a consequence, what I tell people is sit in that emotion as long as you possibly can. And sometimes it's 1 second, sometimes it's 1 moment. But sit there as long as you possibly can. And when you can't sit there anymore, well, then move on and do something else. For me, the hardest emotion to sit in for me was grief. And the reason was, people tell you, well, that you should get over it and you should, go through these steps, and it's a very linear process and it lasts for a defined period of time. And, you with the destruction of your family that you didn't find out about until you returned from overseas, I can only imagine the load of grief that came crumbling down on top of you. And I can only imagine how grief was probably a good part of what you were struggling with.
Only it came out as anger.
Exactly, because I don't know about you, but anger was, my default, my go-to.
Anger
I
was
could,
almost allowed.
yes, and encouraged. And what I came to realize also, and I can't remember which book I talk about it in, it's either You Can't Eat Love or The Journey from Failing to Healing. What I came to understand is anger is an algebra problem, because it's this plus this equals anger. And sometimes there are 3 or 4 things that are going on that equal anger. And the only reason that we end up at anger is because we can't feel embarrassed. We can't feel distraught. We can't feel disregarded. We can't feel disrespected all at one time, individually. So it all adds up in that algebra problem to come out as anger.
I like that. Never heard that.
Oh, it's one of my Leslie Science things.
Good. It's good. Makes sense.
But truthfully, if we are taught from that very early age how to stuff down all these other things, but we are encouraged or demonstrated to us that anger is the acceptable emotion, well, then that's where we're going to go. So when we start on this journey to begin to become friends, I use the term loosely, with our feelings, it can feel extremely scary and very uncomfortable. And I tell people it was hard for me to learn how to name my emotions. Now, I knew the names of emotions. Don't misunderstand. I did not know I could name my emotions. That's where it was hard. Being able to feel that tension inside and say, you know what, right now, what I'm feeling is as if I can't trust this person. Because this is what's going on. Or, right now I'm feeling very disappointed because I made this choice, or somebody did something, I'm feeling disappointed. Or I'm feeling disrespected because I was trying to say something and this person talked over me. Naming our specific emotions helps us actually eliminate the algebra problem of anger.
Learning all kinds of stuff today. It's good. And and it's kind of one of those things too of, I don't know if there was another podcast I had heard, but lately I've even started to change my approach with my daughter, in that sometimes when she is angry, I let her express it because it needs to come out. And if it's not going to come out now, it's going to come out elsewhere
Or
at some
sideways,
other,
as I like to say.
but definitely trying to be more accepting of that, because I think as parents, when a child gets angry, our first thing is to try to stifle that emotion, try to stop it, of like, well, what made you so upset? Why are you doing this? Why'd you throw that? As opposed to maybe addressing the underlying root cause.
Well, why not ask her what is really going on right now?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I discovered is when I'm asking why questions, why comes from the part of the brain that doesn't have any language. So as if we ask what and how and who and when questions, our brain can provide language to those things, and they will uncover the why. Have you ever tried to explain why to somebody? Why you were making a decision to do something, and you struggle to find the words about why. I mean, my husband will ask me all the time, why are you doing whatever? And I'll just tell him because, but that's not an answer. Well, you know what, it's
Right.
my answer. But instead, when your daughter is angry or sad or whatever, instead of saying why, or just ask her the question, what is really going on right now? And then as she is telling you, say to her, well, of course you feel that way. Why wouldn't you feel that way? I can only imagine why you're feeling that.
Yeah. Somebody said on a podcast too, it was like, instead of asking somebody what's wrong with you,
Yeah.
say what happened to you. And so, as opposed to, I've taken the approach of, because it's not always a what happened to you, I say, was there something that happened that is causing this behavior or causing you to feel this way? And that's kind of the approach that I've been taking. And it's getting better, I
Well,
could say.
but the other part about the question, was there something that happened?
Mm-hmm.
You're removing the to her piece of it, and you're allowing her to see the what happened as something that's external to her, instead of her not having any power in the situation.
Hmm.
Because when things happen to us, then it implies that we were powerless to stop it. You know, I mean, a car wreck can happen to you. Somebody can
Right.
run into you and you're powerless. I had a guy, run into me. I was powerless. I had my foot on the brakes, both of them, and he still hit me.
Oh,
But when we say, what happened to you, we're implying that they were powerless. But when you
yeah.
ask, the way that you're asking the question, then we are, removing it as happening to her. Something happened, and you're feeling XYZ. Can you tell me a little bit about this? Let's keep our power. Keep your power. Don't give it away.
And I unintentionally did that till you just explained it. But I think my initial reason for not wanting to say what happened to you is because it's if somebody asked me that, I feel like I would be like, well, what do you mean what happened to me? Like, no,
Defensive.
yeah, like nothing happened to me, or it implies that something went wrong.
Or you did
Dir
something wrong.
yes, directed at me versus kind of was there an external situation that has happened that's now causing you to feel a certain way and express
Mhm.
it in a certain way? And so, yeah, I think I initially had changed it somewhere in there just because that's kind of how my brain thinks of I didn't like that directly to.
Mhm.
You were saying that, a lot of this started when your son had a child and you started listing all the stuff you were eating and noticing I don't want to be like this anymore. And then what kind of small steps, like what did your forward direction look like in the beginning? Make friends with yourself and journal, go on small walks. Did you still keep that food diary and were you just focusing more on whole foods? What did that look like for you?
The small step that I did that provided the most forward momentum was getting a notebook and a pen, and I challenged myself to have a conversation, a 3-page conversation with myself every day for 30 days.
Ooh.
Um, I do not like the term journaling because to me it implies, all kinds of rules and regulations and all this stuff, and I fight against rules and regulations. But I could handle writing in a notebook. And I tell people all the time, I write in a notebook, and people will say, well, that's journaling, isn't it? I said, well, maybe in your world, but not in mine. Now, the other thing is I do not use 8.5 by 11 notebooks. I use the small ones, maybe 6 by 9 at the largest, but
Mhm.
the smaller notebook, because 3 pages in an 8.5 by 11 notebook is a whole different ball game from a smaller notebook. But I challenged myself to do it for 30 days. And as a result, and trust me, I was fighting tooth and nail, but I said, you know what? You're only doing this for 30 days. You can do anything for 30 days. When I got to day 30, I totally forgot that I had challenged myself to do it for 30 days because discovering that I could have honest conversations with myself was so liberating and so freeing that I didn't want to stop. And it was also hugely beneficial in working out times when I was extremely angry as a consequence of things that were happening. I mean, for example, a couple of years ago, there was a situation where somebody betrayed, trust, and just massive, massive, massive. And I was writing in my notebook and I was dancing all around the subject. And I finally wrote, who are you lying to? And I took a breath and I said, well, me and myself only want me to be happy, but I sees everything. So we talk about ourselves, we're me, myself, and I. And I said, okay, so stop lying because I already knows what it is that you're thinking, what you're really thinking. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started writing what I was really thinking and feeling, and people may be horrified. However, I say this because your feelings are your feelings are your feelings. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are not actions. Feelings are feelings. And the more we fight against them and the more we deny what we're feeling, the more tension that builds. So I wrote, I am so angry with this person. I cannot believe that they did this. They absolutely destroyed my trust. I'm struggling to trust anyone. I wish that they would just die. And then I was able to, to move forward. And I said,
Right.
okay, as a consequence, now I recognize why I'm struggling with, these other things that I'm struggling with. And I continued on. And when I closed my notebook that day, I felt so much better because I was no longer keeping the lid on that boiling pot. I had admitted to myself what I was really feeling, why I was really feeling it, and I felt as if then I could start moving forward. But the end result of that conversation was I could move that person out of my universe, send them out to Pluto, and only on occasion they would pass me in orbit. But it liberated me. It got me out of the cell that I had trapped myself in. And I share that example simply to say, your feelings are your feelings. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are not actions. Feelings are often and can be very, very ugly. But you know what? They are simply feelings, and it is okay.
So you realize you were emotionally eating. How did you correct that piece of the equation? Other than obviously eating less, but how did you wrap your brain around like looking at what you'd eaten and then going, I need to change, and how am I going to change it? Did you do in any sort of like, or as you became more in tune with your emotions, did that contribute to eating better? Or did you have to kind of stop and say, hey, I'm just going to cut down and start eating less?
And as I started listening to myself and hearing myself and feeling my honest and true emotions, food was losing its power.
Okay.
And I was able to make better choices. And I tell people there are no bad choices. There are good choices, great choices, and not so good choices. It's all about language. Language is so important. Our brain,
Yeah.
hears the language. So I started, flipping my language. Some days I'd make a not so good choice, but you know what? Oh well, and let's move
I
on.
always say sometimes you nourish the body, other times you need to nourish the soul. So if you need that donut sometimes, have it.
But or you can just say, you know what, that donut was not a great choice today, and that's okay. Just oh well, move on. Tomorrow's another day, and that's okay. 5 minutes from now is another day. It doesn't matter. You made a choice in that moment, and that is the choice you made in that moment. Let's move on. But truthfully, as I started feeling heard, and as I was listening to my own feelings and my own thoughts and things, food started losing power. And I wasn't turning to something to release the tension because the tension was being released as a consequence of hearing what I was saying, what I was thinking, what I was feeling. Now, interestingly, I was doing a workshop for the Coalition of Juvenile Justice up in Louisville, and I was sitting in the room waiting for the attendees to come in, and one of the hotel workers came in the room to check to see if there was anything I needed or anything like that. And we started having a conversation. And among the things that we talked about were, how he can get frustrated with some of the demands of the people that are using the facility, and how unthoughtful they might be or how demanding they might be. And I said to him, so at the end of the day, what do you do with all that pent up anger and frustration that you have? And he says, well, I just go home. And I said, and then what do you do? He said, well, some evenings it's not a real good evening, or I stew or whatever. And I said, how about, what do you think might happen, or how would your evening be different if you were to just have a notebook and a pen, and as soon as you got home, or maybe as you were going out the door from work, you just had a written conversation with yourself about all these frustrations? How do you think that would feel? And he looked at me for just a moment. He said, I think that would be the most helpful thing I could do with my day, because how many times at the end of a day do we have all that stuff, and all we want to do is go home and, not literally, but figuratively, kick the dog. And when we don't address what we are really feeling, then it builds up, it comes out sideways, and we take it out on somebody that we really care about simply because they got in our way in a moment when we were struggling with what we were really feeling.
How can people be more compassionate toward themselves? And is this something, you had to learn? So I'm guessing this is something you write about in your books. Do you have any like Facebook groups or any other support type systems that people attend to, gathering type things where y'all talk about it or discuss kind of being more compassionate, self-love, anything like that? Kind of like a women's group?
I do have my Facebook group, You Can't Eat Love, and I do post things in there. And then I also have worked one-on-one with people to help them learn to love themselves. My preferred way of doing it, and I don't have any going on right now, is to, do a workshop with a large group of people, because then, we can interact and we can have conversations, and we can also be among other people who are like ourselves, and we can see that we're not the only one who is thinking these crazy thoughts or doing these crazy things. So I really prefer to do workshops. I also do speaking engagements. People can contact me if they want me to come and speak. I don't have any booked recently because I've had other things happening in my world, but those are the things that I do. But people are welcome to reach out to me at any point in time. I will have a conversation. It really is me. It's not a virtual assistant or AI.
Yeah.
I love all the AI bots that are out there now. Oh my gosh.
And what are a few things people can do to be more compassionate towards themselves?
Well, number one, acknowledge that how you feel is how you feel. If you are feeling something and that sentence pops up in your head, you shouldn't be feeling that way. Say, no, wait, hold on. How I'm feeling is how I'm feeling. And then ask yourself the next question: what is really going on right now? And then listen to the answer to that. And then say to yourself, well, of course you feel that way. Why wouldn't you? And see how that all feels inside. And I wish there was another word for feel, but there really isn't.
Now, are there any other things you do?
For me, I go to the gym. I I hate going to the gym, but I love feeling powerful because I lift heavy weights. I didn't used to lift heavy weights, but I lift heavy weights, and I enjoy the feeling that is my self-care. That is my moment. And what I recognize is you can't think, worry, fret, or anything else when you're working on counting and breathing.
Yeah. Well, I always say
So-
you never, it's so, sometimes, some days it's hard to get there, but you never regret going.
no.
You
Some
never,
days, so some days all I'm doing is you're a person who goes to the gym. You're a person who goes to the gym. You're
I try to make mine as long as, even if I can't make it to the actual gym, whether it's out in the country, I go for a walk.
Mhm.
It's just, I try to do something that would be considered both movement, but then kind of like you said, it's also like, it's a little period of time that's yours.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to listen to music. I turn it up really loud. I don't, when I'm outside walking, I don't use headphones because I want to be able to hear, the sounds around me,
uh-huh.
but I'll turn music up really loud. I did discover that listening to rock music or any of the contemporary music causes my anxiety level to raise.
Huh.
So I find quiet, not quieter music, but Christian music, instrumental music, things like that, my anxiety level tends to come down. But the rock music and contemporary music, the anxiety just starts increasing. Now, it may be different for somebody else. My youngest granddaughter loves listening to Blue Man Group, so we listen
Oh
to a
my
lot of
God.
Blue Man Group.
I might have seen them live. I think I saw them live.
I've seen them live also. They're great.
Them, and I saw the Stomp
Stomp,
performance.
yes, amazing.
Yes, they were
Amazing.
both
Mhm.
just crazy. And then Cirque du Soleil, we took the kids to a Christmas one of those. Just incredible.
But
What?
you see, that kind of music tends to, reduce my anxiety level.
Yeah. Have you ever tried stuff like binaural beats, like certain
I've
frequencies?
tried that. I've done that. I had to do that a couple of years ago to help me get to sleep because I was struggling with going to sleep. My mind would start racing.
How did you get rid of that? Because that's a problem I have, is racing mind.
Well, strangely, it actually comes all the way back around to having these written conversations with myself because my mind was racing because I felt like nobody was listening to me and I was struggling to be heard. And the more I listened to myself, with these honest conversations, typically my conversations are in the morning, but
Hmm.
during this period of time, I would just have a conversation in the middle of the day if I needed to. And as a result of that, now I can get in bed and I'm sound asleep within 5 minutes.
Oh man. I either need to have more conversations or something because it
Try,
does not work.
try, try the more conversations, the written conversations with
Yeah.
yourself. Try
Yeah.
that and see.
I mean, I do it quite a bit. I've just always kind of suffered with insomnia, and now
Hmm.
I try to utilize it to my advantage. Sometimes I'm like, oh, if I get up at 3 in the morning and I went to bed at 11 and everybody's asleep, I can come in the office and edit a podcast and
Yeah.
do different things. It turns out to be my time, so it's kind of like I just say, well, I use it to my advantage to get the things I want. Because I find too that, especially if you're in a relationship and you have children and you have a job and all these things that compete for your attention, having that solitude and alone time is crucial
Pivotal.
for me.
Hmm.
And if it weren't for not being a good sleeper and waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, then I wouldn't always get that time. And I can tell when I don't have that time.
Well, and I don't know about you, but like I said, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So growing up, being alone it just didn't happen very often.
Right.
And I do better when I have time by myself. And a lot of people don't understand that. I actually am out of bed more days than not by 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
And
wow.
at first I was getting a little frustrated. And then I said, you know what? It's quiet. The dogs are not demanding my
Hmm.
attention. They're still sleeping. If I want to, I can watch what I want to on TV without listening to anybody comment about, are you watching whatever the heck it is? Or I can come in here to the computer and, allow that quiet, and it's dark out the windows, so I can't even see the birds or anything, and just sit here and allow, whatever it is that's in me to just come out in the creative space. But I have gotten where I don't know about you, but I've gotten where I treasure
I do.
those early morning hours, and I get really resentful.
I'm an only child, so I need it.
Okay, yeah, you're an only child, so yes, you are used to it. You're hardwired to be alone. I am from, one of 6 kids. The youngest one is 8 years younger than I am. I am hardwired that I have got to have some space because
Yeah.
I lived in, such close confines. But uh, I get resentful if the dogs want to go outside at 4:30 in the morning, or if my husband decides he's going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, go away, go away.
Well, things are about to change for me slightly, but not terribly because the last day of school was Friday, so we're
Mm.
we're officially summertime. So I'm readjusting my podcasting schedule to allow myself to spend time with my daughter, of course, over the summer.
But do them in the middle of the night. Do them at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
I'm gonna do some early morning ones and then some late evening ones and block out the majority of the day for us to go to the pool and do
Mhm.
daddy daughter stuff and yeah. And then when I wake up early, I can edit and do all that. But
Yeah,
yeah. So where can
because
people well go ahead.
I was going to say I've gotten up out of bed and recorded podcasts at 3 o'clock in the morning with people in Australia, India, and the UK. So you
Oh,
can pretend that you're in one of those countries and tell people, look, I'm recording at 4 o'clock in the morning.
where can people find you and your books?
The easiest way to find me is on my website, which is youcan'teatlove.com. And you can find out all about me, including links to my books and my email if you would like to go ahead and reach out to me.
And all that will be included in the show notes and description, just a FYI. Any last words of wisdom for the audience?
You are enough exactly as you are. And if you don't believe it, I will believe it for you until you are able to believe it for yourself.
Well, you've made it this far, which means you're probably a super fan of the show. That's amazing, and I really appreciate your support. To keep up with all the latest updates, make sure you're following the show on social media. You can find all the links in the bio. And if you've been enjoying the content, I'd be so grateful if you could take a minute and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people who might love the show as much as you do. Also, don't forget to tell one friend about the show as well. Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. And if you're feeling extra generous, check out the link tree in the bio where you can find a link to donate. Every little bit helps me keep creating the content you love. Thanks for being an awesome superfan. I couldn't do it without you.
Let's go. asteroid of fear.